Could it be demand creation or could it be de-risking? Let us find out. Our first panelist is Mr. Ayaz Kamil, Global Head of Mechanical Services, Siemens. Mr. Ayaz is an entrepreneurial leader driving strategy and business growth for smart mechanical services at Siemens. Next, we also have Mr. Gaurav Gupta, founder and managing director, Desire Energy Solutions. In a very short span of time, Gaurav has led Desire Energy to great accolades, including the National Award by Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi for Outstanding Entrepreneurship in 2016. I would like to request the speakers to be seated on the stage. We also have Ms. Megha Kaladharan, Counsel Energy and Infrastructure Practice in Trilegal. Megha routinely advises the International Finance Corporation and governments of developing countries to develop PPP projects, which includes energy efficiency, street lighting. Finally, we have Mr. Sukrit Malik, CEO, Energia. He is also the co-founder of Energia, an ESCO dedicated to unlocking data-driven energy and emission savings for industrial and commercial facilities in Asia and Africa. The moderator for this session is Dr. Satish Kumar, President and ED AEEE. Welcome all the panelists and moderator. Let me hand over the mic to Dr. Satish now.
So, good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome to all the panelists on the dais. We are going to discuss a topic that I think, at least as far as I know, it's like 30 years old. And the joke on ESCO is that I think even when I was in the US, that there used to be a National Association of Energy Service Companies, and one day one person actually picked up the brochure for their annual conference and then placed it side by side on the same conference brochure from 10 years ago, and just said that what has changed. So nothing, like pretty much the same topics, the same issues, and the same cast of characters also, with a little bit of difference that was there. So also, I think AEEE, for the benefit of people who don't know, AEEE was established as an ESCO association. That was our beginning when this was established in 2008. And the idea also was that it's going to be an industry-led platform, and it should work towards, I think, creating a market for energy efficiency. And even at that time, it was clear that ESCO probably is the route through which I think the more private sector companies can be engaged in making a business case for energy efficiency. And we still feel I think that thesis has not changed. But what I think we have gained is that why is this so hard? Why is it so difficult? And that's something that we are going to discuss. So there are things that I think the overarching thing is that how do we scale up ESCO as sort of like as a market in India? And even globally, I would say that, yes, I mean, we have a few success stories in China. We have a few success stories in the US. But if you look at, I think yesterday there was a lot of discussion on doubling the rate of energy efficiency and the investment, and IEA talks about like $840 billion that are going to be needed. That is happening today, and they are saying that it needs to go up to $2 trillion. So I think ESCO, even around the world, is still a very, very tiny fraction of, I think, what the numbers that we are talking about. So I'm going to start with, so I think what I'm going to do is that I've already, I think, set the context a little bit, but the three things that we are going to be talking about, that what will it take to scale the ESCO market, that's the overarching theme that we are talking about. because we know that all of us are interested in sort of like achieving that goal. The second is that I think if we have 2 or 3 things that we want to discuss. So one is the sort of like the legal construct, I think is some of the issues that ESCOs face when they enter into contracts and other things. And we have Trilegal here, I think, who with their experience can speak a little bit on that. We have another thing which is important is that rather than just narrowly focusing on energy savings, can we actually look at some of the non-energy benefits and whether that will help move the needle in the right direction. So that's the second thing. And the third thing, which is the big elephant in the room, is the measurement and verification. I think which is always, I think, mentioned in the same breath when we mention ESCO. So I think these are the, I think, 3 overarching topics, and I will have some questions there that we will have. But I'll start with one quick question. And it's just a show of hands from the panelists. I'm not going to go to the audience. But what is the biggest challenge that the energy efficiency community faces when we are trying to scale up, I think, the business case for energy efficiency? So here are sort of things that I have written. Just wanted, and I think he picked the one that you believe is the most important one. So the energy efficiency is diffused and disaggregated. Okay, so that's the first one. The second is there are high transaction costs that are involved in terms of the ticket size that we talk about, and that's the second thing. The third is that if we disregard the product, I think he focused interventions, where I think India does reasonably well, whether it's LED, whether it's, I think we are trying to do fans or VFDs and other. It does. But if we start to look at solutions, then it involves a range of stakeholders. And I think just aligning those stakeholders to actually achieve the energy efficiency, larger savings from energy efficiency solutions, I think is a more difficult thing. So that's the third thing. And there are 2 other things which are a little bit more general that I am talking about. So the energy efficiency story that we talk about is very powerful for an individual consumer or a business, right? But it gets very complicated when you take the same story to a financier or to an investor. So I think that's the fourth thing. I think, do you think that's an important role? And the fifth one is that energy efficiency is just not sexy enough. Okay? So I think it requires grunt work. It requires, I think, a lot of like audits, M&V, installation, commissioning, and even if after that there are question marks on that. So what, I think, Ayaz, what do you think amongst these 5? I think you will pick one as the topmost reason. Okay, so I think in the financing community, the story is not very clear. I think the narrative becomes a little more muddled. Okay, Megha?
So I think same. I would think bankability and financing related risks are at the forefront. And I think a lot of things that you mentioned could be solved if those financing risks can be addressed.
Okay, all right. Gaurav, don't get biased by, I think, what you are hearing. I think you be firm with what you believe, but yeah, go ahead.
So Satish, since we are in a very niche area of ESCO, it is for the water infrastructure, basically public water infrastructure. So for us, the most challenging thing is to convince the client, the government people, that you are really inefficient and there is a mechanism that without taking anything, we are going to make this entire system efficient. So I think I will go with your first point.
Okay, all right. Okay, Sukrit?
I think I'd have to go with aligning the stakeholders, especially because selling services in a product-driven country is hard.
Okay.
And, you know, I think, and everything is a part of this, like from the contracts to building trust, but aligning the stakeholders and getting them on a mission to execute this, that's the tricky part.
All right, great. So we have some, I think, divergent thoughts on this thing. So I think without further ado, I just wanted to set the context a little bit, I think, in terms of, I think, what we are trying to discuss. And one thing that I would like to also talk about is that we are not talking about creating a 50 crore or 100 crore kind of like market for ESCO. Okay, I think that's something that we know. I think individually, I think the entities are doing. I think what we are really thinking about that can we create like tens of thousands of crores? Is it like 10,000 crore or 50,000 crore? Because we truly believe. I mean, if you look at the potential, it's there. But I think so. What will we will need to do to actually get to that level? So we'll request. I think when you are offering your comments, I think it's some of the questions. Then just try to have that big picture, which of course has to be informed from your personal sort of opinion. And I think as part of the stakeholder, I think one of the things that I see, we have a large sort of multinational company, Siemens. We have Tri-Legal, which is looking at the legal structure and sort of payment risk mechanism, and I think what kind of guarantees need to be there. We have a startup. I think both of you are kind of startup, but I think a startup. And one is like very focused on a particular technology. So not trying to say that, hey, we can do like 50 ECMs and other things, but saying that, no, I think we heard about the water energy nexus, and Gaurav, I think your company is, I think, one of those companies that is trying to focus on that. So I think we have, again, here also a diverse set of like stakeholders. I think maybe from the supply side, I think more from the demand side, but I think that's still, I think, interesting. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to perhaps, again, I think so I think I've talked about some of, maybe I think there are some things that, so I've talked about financing, I've talked about the MNV platform, I've talked about the risks, and I think the contractual issues that are there, non-energy benefits, I think, so these are like some of the high-level things. But maybe I'll start with Megha, you. I think because I do feel that ESCO contracts are different, right? I think we talk about like procuring goods, procuring, I think, services. But here, like, it's a lot of people from the procurement, they don't understand how to treat, I think, an ESCO contract. And I think that's, I think, the start of the challenges that we face. So I think I have a couple of thoughts here, and maybe you can expand upon. So what are the problems and potential solutions for mitigating risks, I think, in ESCO projects, especially in the public sector funded by institutional investors? So that's the one thing. And what policy changes or initiatives do you believe are necessary to stimulate the growth of the ESCO market in India? And how big a role you think standardization can actually take place? So I think, yeah, if you can respond to these questions, or if there are things that you want to share, I think, which are related to this, that would be.
So thank you for the questions. So just a little bit of background of the kind of work I've done in this space. I have worked with the International Finance Corporation as their legal advisor as part of Tri-Legal on energy efficiency street lighting projects in different states in India. And the issues that you mentioned when it comes to capacity of the municipal corporations to sort of understand complex contracting structures, there is a gap there. So we try and bridge that gap while we are doing these projects. But it is hard work. So when we are designing the bid documents for these projects, bankability is at the forefront. So when you're looking at an energy performance contract, we were looking at a shared savings model. There are certain concepts which are fundamental, not just to energy efficiency projects, but to any sort of successful PPP project. One would be, of course, payment security, especially when you're dealing with a public, like a municipal corporation. The credit rating varies from state to state. So you need to sort of assure lenders that they are ring-fenced from this counterparty risk. So how do you do that? One is to create a payment security mechanism, escrow mechanism, through which payments are assured to the private party who comes in. Another important aspect is the termination compensation. In case of default, how is the lender being protected? So again, something which we always have in our bankable PPP contract would be to ensure that the debt due to the lenders is covered in case of a termination scenario, even if it's for either the ESCO's default or for the government's default. And it's difficult to push with the government that even when the ESCO is at default, the lenders need to be protected, otherwise the project will not get financed. So when there's an ESCO default, you would want a certain percentage, let's say 90% of the debt due to be covered by the government. When it's a government's default, you would expect that in addition to debt due, they will get a certain percent of their entire equity investment back as well. So these are a couple of things that when it comes to the contracting itself, we ensure are in the documents, and it takes time to sort of build this discuss this with the government and explain to them why this is necessary. The documentation, there's no standardization in India. So in these projects that we have worked with the IFC, we've tried to make them standard in line with other sectors. But there is no uniformity, and governments are not required to follow any set of documents or any set principles. To take a sort of a parallel from the renewable energy sector, which has grown in an exponential rate over the last decade, you see a lot of standardization because there are certain principles that a government requires states to follow when it comes to the contracting that they have to do. So I think one of the big pillars of, or one of the challenges is the non-standardization of documents. And that states, at the state level, there is a very big difference in the capacity that different states and state governments have. And this is linked again to the counterparty risk and how lenders view this risk. So to a large extent, some of this can be mitigated through having robust contracts with payment security mechanisms, with termination compensation in place.
Okay. So thanks. I think what I am taking away, one is the, I think the risk framework that you are talking about and who owns the risk, and whether I think that distribution or ring fencing of the risk, I think is happening properly. That's, I think, the one key point. The other piece that I am also understanding that when you are looking at standardization, I think my sense is that AEEE, we have been involved in some. If you go and ask Bureau of Energy Efficiency, they'll say, no, there are standardized ESPC contracts and other things, and maybe they have tried to do it 3-4 times. But I think, is it truly standardized, and how widely that is actually getting used? So I think, and whether that has the force of law behind it, or these are all kind of voluntary attempts that have been made, but their adoption is, I think, fairly, all over the place, I would say. So I think interesting, the observations, Megha, thanks for that. I think in continuation, because you mentioned the municipal contracts and others, so I would like to go to Gaurav. Gaurav, there is a saying by, that is attributed to Albert Einstein, that you cannot solve the problem with the same mind that created it, right? So I think you are also talking about that you find it very hard sometimes to convince people that no, there is water leakage, there is, I think your pumps are not, I think, performing, because I think they have been part of, I think, the purchasing, they have been part of the operation and maintenance. So it becomes hard for them to sometimes accept, I think, what an outsider is coming and telling. So I think what, from your perspective, I have a couple of pointers, and if you can respond to that. So I think what unique challenges have you faced? I think when we are talking about this water energy nexus, and I think working with the municipal in bulk water pumping, or I think in a related area. And what has been your sort of like experience with policy for ESCOs at the state and local level? Because again, I think ESCOs have been talked about for a long time. I think if you go to, depending on who you go to, I think they will say that, no, there are some, I think, work that is done. And finally, I think what do you see as the sort of non-energy benefits that we talked about? Because I think water is a public good. I think if you are ensuring, I think a fixed amount of water supply to every household, then that could be separated. That is a very, very important benefit that I think the municipal authorities are delivering. So how have you played that angle when you have gone and pitched, I think, the energy efficiency solutions to municipal authorities?
Yeah, Satish. So, as I explained with your first question, that major challenge is again to convince the people, to convince the local bodies that this is one of the solution, because they are still struggling with the basic things like to supply the water, which is their prime motto. So with that providing a solution that we are here to conserve the energy in addition to the water you want to supply to the public. So that's the major challenge, and I'm sure BEE is doing good things to motivate the government, municipalities as well as the other bodies like Jal Nigam and all, and now we have AWE like institution who is working on that. So in addition to that, the next challenge is to define the M&V, because the water demand is variable. It depends on season to season requirement of the public, then the festivals requirement of the public. So looking at that the water requirement will be changed, and another factor is availability of the water. So local bodies defines that when they will supply how much of the water, and on the other hand, public consumes based on their demand. So initially we struggled a lot that how to define a base mark or the baseline, that what is the current status of the power consumption. So finally we come up with a solution of measuring it at kWh per KL as M&V protocol, that how much water power is being consumed to supply a kiloliter of water. But when we move forward, so this was pretty success with our pilot project in 2010-11 in Rajasthan. But when we move to the giant project with the bulk water supplying, so again there is a question of trust, that how this saving is being certified. So then we find out some value added solution, and we implemented the IoT solutions with our ESCO projects. So if I talk about my project we started in 2013 for the Jodhpur city. So we added a IoT based solution that we will provide you the mobile app based solution to the government client, that you can see on your mobile that how much water have been produced today and how much energy have been consumed, and you can even compare it with the baseline data have been established by the M&V. So that solution really works, and client got good confidence on us and the ESCO mechanism as a whole. Further, when we move forward in 2017-18, again from the beginning, their major focus is to providing the water, not on the energy conservation and all. So once we were approaching them to do this ESCO project, and we are going to take all the responsibilities for these pumping station for next 10-15 years, they are assist that we want a single window solution, that you need to take care of the aligned pipelines, aligned water treatment plant. Otherwise, only pumping station they were not agreed. So we just make a hybrid kind of model, that yes, we will have a ESCO come the operation maintenance protocol. The O&M of the pumping stations will be the part of ESCO, but we ready to take the pipelines and treatment plants along with that. So that model really works. We started this in 2017 for the around 300 villages water supply in Ajmer district. So in addition to the 32 pumping stations, we are providing operation maintenance to the more than 500 kilometers of pipelines and a giant WTP structure. So that really wins the heart of the client, and they agreed with us, and after that we got a lot of project aligned with that.
Okay. So
yeah, I think I able to cover all your questions. Yeah.
So, so thanks, Gaurav. What I think hearing from you, is clearly, I think more awareness and kind of sensitization, I think at different levels will help, because I think as a company you have limited bandwidth, you can provide a solution, but I think the awareness part has to be done by maybe government, maybe entities like AEEE, so that I think, so that's one thing. The second piece, I think, and we will come back, I have some follow-up questions on M&V, but I think I'll come on the second round on that. You said that how the M&V thing has evolved, and how the bouquet of services, if you actually help them with their pain points, then they become, I think, your ally. Otherwise, I think there is always a little bit of, I think, adversarial relationship, I think, in this. So, so thank you, I think, for, making those points. Ayaz, I want to come to you. You are a big multinational company. You have heard, I think, from Gaurav, I think, how are they operating. I know that, I think, Siemens is perhaps going to operate in a different way. And of course, you also are looking at the building sector probably as, I think, one of the areas. Also, I think Siemens has a financial services arm as well. So I think when you respond, I think how does that actually help, I think, your team? Because you have a financing arm backing, I think, your thing, that would be helpful. But I think on a couple of things, given Siemens' global presence, how does the approach to M&V in ESCO projects differ across markets? And what lessons can India learn from this? Because we understand that in mature markets, I think M&V gets dealt a little differently. But if you have, I think, some experiences, some case studies in terms of how in MENA or like in North America or Australia or I think some other place, that would be very helpful for the audience. And then what role does technology play in automating and streamlining the M&V process? I think Gaurav mentioned about the mobile app. And I know that, again, I think Siemens has a lot of technology to automate, I think, M&V. So how do you see those technology being playing out? And what is the acceptance rate? I think that, which is, I think, another very important thing, that you can put all the technology, but if the customer doesn't, I think, believe in that or keeps arguing, then I think it's a challenge. So maybe I think I'll request you to address some of these issues.
Yeah, sure. So if you look at the different markets, be it the Middle East, North America, or be it India per se, from the ESCO projects or energy efficiency performance contracting point of view, then measurement and verifications many a times are a bone of contention. And the reason being that while in contracts we can very simply say that all the measurement and verification is going to be based on the IP/MVP protocol, but the problem is that even the ESCO side, there is very limited knowledge as far as the IP/MVP is considered. There would be handful of analysts, those who are certified by this body, which is EVO. Same is the case with the customer side, and the situation that side is much worst. So when you get into the discussion of type A, type B, type C types of M&V, then most of the time there is no awareness. And these items are not even part of the contract. And that is the reason that many a times when I have hardly come across a customer where there is no intention to pay. Customer wants to pay. But since it has not been very clearly stipulated, the guidelines are not in place, and that is why we end up into an argumentation. Mostly because be it building, be it a process industry, the load pattern keeps on changing. And that is why the solution to this, what we found the other countries are also adopting, and I also did it with one of my projects, is that generally what happens that M&V is done only for the period of payback. So if the payback is 2 years, then M&V also would be for 2 years. If we can expand this to higher number of years, for example, in Saudi, they are doing it for 10 years, even if the payback is 4 years. Similarly, for one of the dairy projects that we are doing in India, their customer actually came up with this idea that if you are guaranteeing me 10, let us make an agreement wherein you give me 50 over a period of 5 years, and even if there is shortfall in between, then it's okay. So cumulative, I want to have 50. So this is something which is, I would say, an arrangement which we ourselves are making, but the need is that there has to be a third party verification or ratification body, so that when there is a dispute arises, then we can refer to them, and they as an expert can surely guide the ESCOs, not only the ESCOs but customer also, that this is the way how the M&V can be done. And to answer to your question, how technology is playing a very important role. So yes, the data transparency can only come when you are utilizing the new age technology, which not only Siemens but most of the technology company have cloud-based energy monitoring platform, and that provides a lot of data transparency, history of the data, and also certain, I would say, apps or widgets which can compare vis-a-vis what the savings has been achieved as compared to the previous year. and that is how the technology is playing a very important role. And I think MNV is becoming much easier because of utilization of these technology rather than doing a manual calculation. Thirdly, when we implement the ESCO projects or energy efficiency project, then there are certain ECMs which are very favorite. So for example, HVAC, hot water kind of reduction. So maybe some low-hanging fruit can be taken, and a guideline on the first step can be created for those ECM which are very prevalent in the market, so that the guidelines can be created in that direction in order to scale up the business. Because at least for those ECMs, if some quick guidelines are available, then we can surely see the, I would say, much acceptability in the market from the customer side.
Thank you. Thank you, Ayaz. I think I think three things you are saying. That I think how do we standardize M&V? How do we create a little bit more awareness? I think both on the suppliers and sort of the demand side who are looking for energy services. Also, if third-party M&V can be standardized, and I'll come with some specific things in the second round for that. Technology, you are saying that it brings transparency, and it also, I think, some of the cost of like the metering and the sensors and the energy management systems, monitoring systems, these have been coming down. So I am assuming that I think you are alluding to those things, and that can actually improve the trust between the customer and the service provider. So I think that's
absolutely.
So, yeah. So that's I think is so I will say that those are important points. So Sukrit, I will come to you. You are also like a startup, and in your sort of young life as an ESCO, I think what do you think what is the critical again role of technology? So I'm going to pose, because I think I pose the same question to Ayaz, because I think they have a suite of I think products and solutions which can immediately cater to the M&V part. But what from your vantage point do you see the role of technology, I think, in assuring measurement and verification? So I think if you can speak on that. And then what are the sort of key challenges that you see, I think, in terms of when you implement ESCO projects with private sector clients? I think what are the key issues that are coming out? If you can share that, and how can an ecosystem level, do you think an ecosystem level approach here could actually help the entire ESCO community and even all the clients?
Thank you for the question, Satish. Thank you for having me on the panel as well. And I think Energia, being a young ESCO, we're about 6 years old, so we've been out in the field, going industry to industry, getting a sense of how customers are looking to unlock energy efficiency, both on CapEx and OpEx based solutions. And the way we see it is that there are two challenges here. The first challenge is, how do you do M&V in a way that it's accurate, it's affordable, and it's scalable? This challenge is a technology challenge in a large right, but this is the first challenge. And the second challenge is around building trust. How do you align the stakeholders? How do you ensure that the M&V that you're doing is trusted by the end user, and they're willing to accept and pay for the results of it? If we talk about the first point, which is technology, you're absolutely right, as Aya said as well. Digital measurement technologies, monitoring and verification, cloud-based energy monitoring systems have all come down dramatically in cost over the last couple of years. Now it's accessible both for large companies like Siemens and small companies like us to deploy these solutions rather quickly. And computers are better at logging data, at analyzing it, at contextualizing it in light of a defined protocol, as opposed to humans, and it is more transparent and trustworthy. I think upcoming developments both in machine learning and AI are also making the qualitative analysis part of this more streamlined, and you can do better reporting for individual end users now. So there are a lot of good technological developments happening, but I feel in this technological conversation, what we often forget is that there is a very large capacity building challenge that hides behind this. If you need to do, IoT based M&V, you need to have qualified installers that are going and putting the measurement equipments in the right place. You need people doing site visits, energy analysts studying this data and being able to, exercise their expertise and prove these energy savings. So I think it is both a data and expertise challenge, and we must look at both of them in conjunction. As far as the problems with scaling ESCO in industry goes, I think that goes back to the trust and how do you convince these stakeholders. And for public contracts, let's say there are a certain set of stakeholders. We primarily operate in the private industrial space or private commercial buildings, and there you've got your sustainability managers, you've got your finance and purchase, you've got your maintenance managers. So there are different set of stakeholders, and every stakeholder has a different set of interests and different sets of requirements to get their jobs done. Like sustainability managers would want data in forms that are in alignment with certain ESG protocols. Your finance people would want an average monthly billing estimation so that they can plan cash flow accordingly. The maintenance managers would want to know how do you read this bar graph or line graph, what it means for their machine's reliability. So I think we have to do a lot of work in getting all these materials ready for them, getting the process, getting the education in place, because even us as ESCOs or people trying to unlock energy efficiency, even if we get everything right, that's not enough. Like the counterparty has to come on the same page, or we need to educate and elevate them. And we've been spending a lot of our time doing this, and I think you alluded to the soft costs or the the amount of effort it takes to get these projects up. I think that capacity building challenge, that is the key. And yeah, I think there's a long way to go, but now there's a genuine interest from that side also because of climate change, energy transition, ESG pressure. So everybody wants to go in the same direction. I think the path is just uncertain, and we need to hold their hand all the way to the end.
Okay, so thanks, Sukrit. So I want to do another quick round. Maybe I think I'll request the intervention to be a little shorter. I think maybe 2 to 3 minutes before I open it up. So we have talked about, I think, more at the project level. I think what are the issues? You are sharing your experiences. I want to go to like 36,000 feet now and just say that, okay, I think some of these issues and I think the challenges are going to stay. I think they are not really going to go away. But if we are thinking about creating a large ESCO market in India, and if we go with some of these challenges, is it going to help or is it going to actually affect us negatively? Because the financiers will say, hey, we are talking about too much nitty-gritty stuff and other things. So I want to go back to you with a couple of suggestions that all the technicalities, all the sort of like the M&V issues and all the engineering issues and all the calibration issues for meters and other things, why should we take these issues to the financiers? What is the reason for us to go and talk? We say that we know that I think energy savings are there. We are talking about creating a much more streamlined and standardized system, which is something that they see when they actually finance a ESCO project, a solar farm or a wind turbine project. And they don't get into the nitty-gritty of, I think, how the installation is going to happen, and if there is dust layer on the solar, then I think what is the degradation in the performance. So I'm trying to take some, I think, learnings from that and say that if we are going to talk about standardization, I think one example, I think, which AEEE is, I think, learning and sort of like thinking about internally, that I think, Ayaz, you talked about IPMVP, and we all understand that M&V is a technical subject, right? I think what kind of data you need to collect, what kind of normalization, what kind of weather patterns are there, what is the operational data and other things. And the moment you bring these kind of things in front of the financier, you have lost it basically, okay? So they are not going to fund your project because they will say there is too much risk here. And I think so I think the idea here is that you say that performance is going to get measured. Okay, savings guarantee that ESCO, I think you have to come out with savings guarantee that is going to be assured by a platform. Okay, by a third party. I think we are talking about third party because the client doesn't understand, they don't have the in-house expertise to actually validate, so they go to a person who is certified. So we are saying that let's actually do all the M&V that we are doing, but the validation, the savings assurance that is being done, that is going to happen through a platform. And all the technical complexity, all the normalization, all the calibration, all the calculations, everything that needs to happen is as per global standard. And I think nobody can doubt it will be validated, it will be audited. And I think for most of the measures, it could be largely automated as well, once I think the data sets and I think the parameters come about. So I think suppose that something like that is there. What is, in your opinion, I think what could it be game changing? Because I think all the arguments and the back and forth that the ESCOs have to do to justify whether the savings is there or not there, what kind of normalization. You submit like, okay, we believe the savings is there. It goes to the savings validation platform. It does the calculation. Yes, I think 100% or 90%, or you are underestimating the savings, and we have used the protocol, we have used everything that is going to be needed, and it goes to the client. And client says, okay, I think it's a third party, it's a technically rigorous platform, it gets done. So I think that is one piece that I believe could be, a potential game changer. But I would like to hear, from you, because we are internally discussing, whether, and there are many people who believe, this could actually unlock, the large. The second piece is the standardization, that we talked about. So I think when you go and say that what is the policy, what is the standardization, maybe I think you have 3-4 variations. I'm not saying that there will be one standard contract that will take care of everything. If it's an LED replacement bulb, it's a very simple thing that you go. If it is more of a variable load, variable operating hours, maybe there is a different kind of a contract, which again safeguards and ring fences the risk, around some of these things. So I want to come back to the M&V part, the platform part, the standardization part, and if you think there is anything else that at a high level can unlock some of the savings, if we are going to some of the financial institutions and we are saying, okay, we are resetting the discussion. We want to have different discussions because we want the money to flow into this sector. And I think this is something that has come out from the consultation. So I will go, Ayaz, starting with you, and maybe short interventions. What do you think? Or if you think there is something else that we need to be thinking about.
So in order to scale up the energy efficiency business from at a very high level, if we are thinking about these platforms.
So just, I'm reminded that just keep your remarks simple because we have a poll also. So I think,
okay. Yeah. I understand. So what will happen that many a times what happens that customer has given a project, energy efficiency project that he wants to do, but he will wait the result to come up till the time he goes for the next project. And that span sometime is more than 2 years. So the moment if there is such a platform wherein he's assured that the savings are going to come, that not only for the customer but financial also, things could be, the scaling up can happen because the projects could be more often than waiting for the entire period to see the results of the such project. So that is onto the platform side. And the another thing which I think one could be the good driver is that many a times such financing of the energy efficiency project is also always compared with the cost of finance available for a normal project. And this is where many a time the discussion between the financer and the customer side financing stakeholder happens at why the cost of such borrowing is so high. So if something can be done in that direction also, it would ease out, because I have seen many months going into that discussion that my cost of borrowing is 5%, then why energy efficiency project has to be at 10 or 12. So if something can be done in that direction, then surely customer mindset would change, that yes, energy efficiency projects would come at a slightly expensive cost of borrowing. And once this is ironed out, then I think I'm sure that many more projects would come in the for the ESCO.
I think in the interest, I do have a follow-up question in terms of the cash flow that is generated, but let's take that offline. Over to you, Megha.
So I'll speak to more on the standardization part. And Satish, like you said, it's not necessary that you prescribe a one-size-fits-all for all the different states we have. What we've done in the renewable energy sector is that we have a set of guidelines which apply to each state every time they want to, let's say, buy renewable solar power. So they have to provide a certain kind of payment security, certain termination compensation. What do you do in FM? So these are the guiding principles for the contract that you will draft. And then states have flexibility on how to build their own power purchase agreements by keeping these principles in mind and incorporating it. So there is flexibility, but there are these guiding principles which are in place, which have to be incorporated in the documentation. So similar things could be considered for the energy efficiency sector as well.
And those guiding principles should be developed by?
So in case of the renewable energy sector, it's the Ministry of Power. Okay. So it comes from the center, and then it's then adopted by the states for their different tenders. Okay. So that's one. And in terms of other third-party interventions that have been successful, one would be, from a lending perspective, is the partial risk-sharing facility that the World Bank has for energy efficiency. So that gives lenders comfort because there is some credit support there, credit guarantee there. And the last thing that I thought was relevant would be maybe exploring additional revenue streams from ESCO projects. There are carbon credits which are now available for energy efficiency projects. So that could be another way, another thing that you could monetize out of an ESCO project, which would be valuable from both an investment perspective as well as from the lenders.
All right, Megha. Gaurav, very quickly, maybe in a minute, what are your key?
So yeah, I agreed with Megha and you as well. First of all, there must be a body who take care of this M&B, so that we can really have client with us, because bodies who are available as of now, they are just trying to see everything from a same angle. They are looking at that energy conservation should be the same with as they have done in the past with LED. So pumps are different and the other markets may be the difference. So it's a huge need of a body who can take care of this M&B call. And from the government perspective, as you rightly said, for the renewable energy, we have a defined guidelines, but for the energy conservation ESCO projects, still there is a gap, and different states are trying to develop different guidelines, different policies, but when we approach to the another state, the same things happens because there is not a standard guidelines or standards. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Gaurav. Yeah.
I think I completely agree. If there's a centralized data-driven monitoring and verification platform that can be third-party validated, it makes a lot of sense. It solves a lot of our problems. And I think this, in conjunction with building capacity and building trust, this is a solution to scale this. As far as capital goes, I have a little from a private sector side. I feel like the minute you start showing the financiers a good IRR, the capital will chase the projects. We should, the focus should be on delivering the projects. The capital will come. It's if we try and do everything for the capital, it might not be the right trajectory.
Yeah, I also feel that I think we should move away from debt-based financing to just commercial lending. If the financially it makes sense, then I think ESCO project should happen. And I think if we go into this historical loop of, I think, going into partial risk guarantees and other things. Yes, I think first loss guarantees and some of these things are there, but there are insurance products. There are many ways, I think, how you can skin the cat. So thank you very much, I think, for your comments. We have a poll, a Mentimeter poll, I think 3 questions that will be sort of like flashed on the screen. And I request, I think, all the people in the audience to sort of express your views by either scanning or putting the code that is there at the menti.com website, and then you can also participate in the Mentimeter poll. So over to you. Okay, we
Yes,
have the
so we have the code, the QR code which you can scan, or please join at menti.com and use the code 87404712. 87404712. So first question is, what is the biggest barrier to the growth of the ESCO market in India? Does anyone want to see the QR again? Oh. What is the biggest barrier to the growth of ESCO market in India? And we have low volume of finance to fund ESCO projects leading right now. Let's also see the second question as the poll goes on. How important do you think a standardized M&V process is for the success of ESCO projects? Please rate from not at all important to extremely important, 1 to 10 on the scale. I think there is a general agreement about how standardized M&V process is important, how important it is, and let us also see what the third question is. How would you rank the following? Would be your topmost recommendation to boost India's ESCO markets? So you can drag your best option and drop it. While the poll is going on, we can also maybe see.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. I don't know if we'll be able to wrap it up. I think.
Yes, so we'll have how many minutes? We have 5 minutes to wrap up.
So, so I think in terms of the way I think the audience is thinking, clearly I think finance is emerging as I think one of the topic. The second question was a little, I think, biased because the way it was structured, I think nobody is going to say 0 or 1 there. So, but we know that I think even in the course of discussion, M&V is coming out as an important topic. And the third one is, again, I think creating demand for energy efficiency project. So this is more from the demand side. So just I think any parting thoughts? I think just a one line or a one word. What do you think we need to do to really scale up the energy services market in India? Just quickly. Short.
I think I already mentioned that financing has to be available, which is also evident from here. And the guidelines and the regulations and the platform that you talked about are, I think, are going to play an important role going forward to scale up the energy efficiency business.
So for me, it would be standardization of bid documents and contracts, as well as at the same time capacity building at the state level.
Yes, to create a standardized documents and guidelines from the central and create definitely awareness to create the market.
I think from me, it's going to be improve project origination of ESCOs and to have a streamlined digital M&V platform.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. I think let's give a round of applause to our panel.
Thank you for this very interesting session. I hope we got the secret sauce as we move ahead. I would like to request Dr. Satish to present the panelists with a token of gratitude.
Thank you so much. We will now have a short 5-minute break for tea. I request you all to please get your tea and come back inside because this is going to be a working tea and we will start in 5 minutes exactly. I request you all to please bring your tea inside so we can start